think it's important for a director to know something about acting. It's good if he or she gets in front of the camera and fails miserably, and then succeeds a little bit. I think it's really important to know what it's like to hit the light, to make sure you're there, to make sure you're there for the other actor, to respond, to get a sense of how you walk across a room, because you can become very self-conscious, what you do with your hands, you know. It's always good after a certain period of time for you to get in front of that camera to play a part, or in somebody else's film, be directed by other people, or any bits and pieces, even if you're playing yourself. I mean, I'm not saying you should read all of Stanislavski or play Kowalski or Cordelia, but it's good to know something about the challenges and the fears that the actors face and the techniques they use and the different approaches they take to what they do. Because again, I'm looking for the connection, that spark between us. Sometimes it proves to be more difficult on set with certain actors than you might have realized, and every once in a while it just doesn't work out. And you're somewhat disappointed. You might get something else. And you may not even like that something else, but it's enough for that moment, and you realize, okay, in the future I had to be careful of this or that. It may not always work. So you do work with what you get, ultimately, you know, and that's a rule, I guess, in filmmaking, or many things, but you may want one thing, but you're gonna, through circumstances, whatever, you wind up with other things, and that also has to do with the actors. So hopefully you want what you get. And there's, the spark of humanity is the key with the actors. I guess the term director is misleading sometimes when it comes to actors. Of course, in one sense, it's on target. I mean, I could not think about working on stage or utilizing techniques by directors who have gone through certain methods. I wouldn't know. One thing, I mean, I would think in a raw situation, actor at least needs the director to kind of orient him or her, because, I mean, you're always going to be shooting out a sequence. That's one of the problems. And they're going to look to you to, you know, tell them where they are in the story and where they're feeling emotionally. It's a very difficult thing, I think. I think if you have the training of a director, or training of directors worked in theater, it might be, it's never easy, but at least you might be more familiar with it. For me, I always find it rather difficult. But this is where you work together. But on the other hand, they also need to explore. And I like to tell the actors too, particularly, try anything, you know. And if you had the time on set, which you don't usually, but if you do, if you make the time, have the time to fail as much as you can, and tell them it's okay. Just go ahead, try this, try that. And you need that freedom. You need to give them that freedom. Particularly, you can do this in the rehearsal. There's no mistake. You just go, you do it. And explore the instincts. And then you try to shape from there in discussion. If something has gone in a different direction, I don't want to say gone wrong, but there's something that's gone in a different direction where people don't agree or something, and you find yourself, you can cover it in such a way, and you never, at times, I must say, you have to be careful. You know, sometimes you think something is dreadfully wrong, and later when you look at it in the context of a cut, it might work, you know. There are things I know don't work immediately, but you shoot them. Just shoot them, because it's a process for the actor to go through that. And if I say, no, you can't do that, I found when I did that, it threw certain kinds of actors off. Not all, but certain kinds. And I found that it's best to let that person, he or she, work it out. And if it's a matter of shooting it, by the time you're discussing, you could shoot it. Then you use it or not. I think in terms of being able to work with De Niro in 8 movies or so, and DiCaprio so far in 5, I mean, again, it's all based on a similar experience, life experience, and a similar way of looking at life. Then, in the case of De Niro, he did actually, he was actually part of the neighborhood I was growing up in at the same time. So he knows the world, he knows the the codes of that area. He knows the behavior. He knows the culture, you know. DiCaprio, something else, with 30 years difference. Yet his instincts are very similar, and his curiosity is very similar to mine, and the ability to take chances, not be afraid, is something that is remarkable, and feel comfortable. This all goes to the way of trusting each other, you see. So when you trust that way, and we have, let's say in the case of Mean Streets or Taxi Driver, we have a really solid story in a way. If they want to take a scene a certain place, I'll go with them there, you know, see what it is, to the point where, you know, either we do it or we don't do it, and in discussion and rehearsal or in setting up the shot. Or we do it and I don't use it. And that doesn't mean you do it and intend not to use it, but you try it later in the cutting. It doesn't quite work. But there's a trust to open the character and enrich it within the context of the way the character's written and who he or she is. That's the key. If they start to take it and go off to suddenly doing things that we don't think the character really should be doing, or who that character is, we'd find it. I think we'd find it. And I felt comfortable with them. Harvey Keitel, too. Mean Streets, Taxi Driver, for example. Judas, when he played Judas in Last Temptation of Christ. But I was very lucky. Barbara Hershey, Willem Dafoe, all these people felt that way, you see. And so this is something that develops with time. I mean, I was very lucky with De Niro because it was on the first film, Mean Streets. We had it. We had that relationship. It was solidified in Taxi Driver because we weren't playing a neighborhood guy, quote unquote. We were playing something else, Travis Bickle, that reflected positively or negatively emotions, psychological states that we understood or felt, yeah, that Schrader wrote. And so that's why there was very little discussion about who he is. We didn't have any discussion on that. We just did it. There's aspects, too, where actors are completely, you get in a situation where somebody's completely incapable of working, whether it's chemicals or just, I don't know. In a case like that, only once I had to recast, I think. I was lucky. But once or twice, maybe. And there was a time where an actor decided he did a few scenes, and 20 years ago this was, 25 years ago, and then one morning he was supposed to show up for the next scene and left a letter saying that he decided not to continue acting and apologized. And so he said, all right. And we cast another fellow and reshot the scenes, squeezing it back into the schedule. These things happen, but if it is a picture where you need the dialogue and you need a certain scene being done and the person can't do it or is incapacitated, it's tricky. Sometimes you're able to get them to do just enough and cover it in such a way, you know, and that takes a lot of time and patience, you know. And sometimes it's an issue where you can't reshoot a lot of things. You have to utilize that person for another 2 weeks. And so you just go through it, you know. The only thing you could think of in the future, you try not to, if the film calls for it, you try not to, meaning if the film is of that style, where you do need a person to go from A to B to C, maybe, or A to C, or A to F, whatever in a scene, somebody who could kind of stay on track, no matter what's going on in their minds or their bodies, their chemicals. Some can't.